Our story takes place in Jerusalem, where we find Paul. This is a tale of miracles, teaching us about trusting God. Long ago, in a hot, dry land, there lived a man named Paul. He was known for his wise words and his love of teaching people about God. One day, while walking on the dusty streets of Jerusalem, Paul saw something that made him stop.
Look! Shouted a voice.
The salt is melting the stones. Paul came closer and saw a group of people looking at the ground. There, in the middle of the street, was a small pile of salt. The strong sun shone on it, making it sparkle like diamonds. But the strangest thing was that the stones around the salt were getting soft, as if they were melting.
How is this possible? Someone asked.
Salt can't melt stones.
Paul smiled.
He knew this was a chance to teach something important. Friends, he said, what you see isn't just regular salt. It's a sign from God to remind us of something very special. People gathered around Paul, eager to hear more. He picked up some of the salt in his hands and began to speak. Do you know why we use salt?
Paul asked.
To make food taste good.
The child shouted.
Yes, that's right, said Paul, laughing. But salt does much more than that. It keeps things fresh and protects them from going bad. In fact, salt was so important that in the old days, it was as valuable as gold.
The people were surprised.
They had never thought about salt that way before. Paul continued, but salt in the Bible means something even more important. God calls us to be the salt of the earth. That means we should do good and help others, just like salt makes things better. At that moment, an old woman came closer. She looked sad and tired. But Paul, she said, how can we be like salt? The world is so big and hard. Sometimes I feel small and useless.
Paul looked at her kindly.
Oh, my friend, he said, you remind me of a story Jesus told. He talked about a mustard seed, which is so small you can barely see it. But when planted, it grows into a big tree where birds can make nests. The woman's eyes lit up. So, even though we're small, we can do big things?
Exactly, exclaimed Paul. Like this salt here.
It looks like a little, but see how it's changing the stones around it. Each of us can be like a grain of salt, doing good wherever we are. People started talking excitedly. They were understanding Paul's message. But, said a young man, what if we lose our flavor? What if we get tired of doing good?
Paul picked up some more salt. Good question, he said.
Jesus talked about that too. He said if salt loses its flavor, it's no good for anything and will be thrown away.
But don't worry.
Just like we can add more salt to food, we can always refill our spirit with good actions and positive thoughts. As he spoke, Paul poured some salt on the ground. To everyone's surprise, the stones started making a weird noise.
A crack. Pop.
It was like they were breaking from the inside.
Wow. The children shouted.
The salt is breaking the stones.
Paul smiled.
You see, he said, a salt looks weak, but it has hidden power. It can even change stones over time. In the same way, our good actions, no matter how small they seem, can change the world around us.
The people were amazed.
They had never thought that something as common as salt could teach such important lessons. So, said Paul, whenever you use salt, remember, you are the salt of the earth. Spread kindness, help others, do good. Even if it seems like a little, over time, you can make a big difference. That day, the people of Jerusalem learned a lesson they would never forget. They understood that, just like salt makes food better and protects things from going bad, they could make the world better and protect what is good.
And you?
How can you be the salt in your world today? May this story inspire our faith and guide us on our path.